Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Well, look who I found. She just happens to be the best Reiki practitioner and energy healer that I know of. And her name is Annie Baker, and she joins us with Red Boots Reiki. How are you doing today?
I am doing really well because in Maine, we don't have the rain. So
Yeah.
that's for the rest of the country.
Yeah, I'm in the New York area. We have rain. I believe it's remnants from Hurricane Ian, and we're actually going to center on Hurricane Ian. Not the eye of the storm or anything like that, but take a cue from that in what we're going to talk about today. And it's all about energy, right?
Yeah. And in this case, the literal energy, if you have a generator, you're not going to be able to power everything from your house. But what do you choose to power? How do you make those priorities?
And when you say power, you mean power within yourself?
In this case, actually, I mean power from the generator. What would you plug in and what would you unplug?
So I thought you were speaking figuratively, but
it'll get figurative in a minute.
Oh, okay. All right.
But we'll get there.
So do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. So we just lost power.
You just lost power and you're in luck you have a generator.
But you can only plug in so many things because it can only supply so much current. So
correct.
Obviously, cell phones to be connected.
Okay. So communication.
Some lights, going to need that.
Yeah.
Let me think. What would be essential? It depends on the time of the year, but if we say hurricane, it's still relatively warm out. So
this, beginning of October.
Yeah, still, we're okay with some blankets, so we don't have to worry about heat or anything like that so much.
Correct.
You're making me think. Like I don't think there's anything else more because even for entertainment to kill time, you can get that on your phone. So I'm not going to do the TV or anything like that.
Right. Yep. You're distilling how you're choosing to communicate.
Yeah, but my first thought is conservation because you only have so much fuel. So why plug a whole bunch of stuff in when you're just going to do the essentials?
Correct. But what about refrigerator or
so you're
a way to cook?
You're talking to a geek. So I know that pulls a lot of current and is going to suck that your fuel down very fast. So I would be very careful about the refrigerator, but yes, that would be on my list.
Right, you're kind of the shut it and don't open it and it will last 4 days. Yeah. No, I'm with you on that.
Or I would get a lot of ice and put it in a cooler and put the important stuff in there. So have that aside. So don't need power for that. Cooking, I have gas, so I don't have to worry.
Okay, all right.
I think that's it. Give me more. What am I missing?
Well, I'm extremely fortunate in that I don't need any electronics for health, but some people do.
Sure.
And so if I was in a situation that would get priority.
Absolutely.
So, kind of, and that would take the top priority because that's life versus, that's a need, not a want.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an interesting exercise because you really look at what are your top priorities for needs and then what can you let go as wants. And it really makes you think, like, okay, there's a lot of things that we have in our house that we can do a circumvent, like food in the fridge, and that we can decide not to use, like television, because there's only a finite amount. And so when you have to prioritize and you have to do it really quickly, because I actually have not been through a huge hurricane because I've never lived down south, but in Killingworth, we used to lose power for days on end. And so you really did learn how to work without power. I learned how to make mac and cheese on the grill.
Okay.
Yep. I learned that if you take an egg carton and put the flashlights in so they point up, you get a much better light.
Didn't know that. All right. Thank you. Duly noted. Wow.
Duly noted. Yeah. And then you didn't have to hold it. And it wasn't in anybody's eyes. So these were the things that we always had in place. Oh, you know what we didn't think about is water. How are we going to get water? Because in Killingworth, we were on a pump, a
Mm,
well pump.
okay.
And so when power was out, we had no water. We could still put things down the drain, but we couldn't turn on the sink and get water.
Wow. Okay. That's another thing you have to prepare for, at least store water.
Yep. Yep. I always had like tanks of water in the basement.
But it's funny
And
you say that because I go to the refrigerator with the filter. So it's filtered water without power. That thing's probably not going to work. So then you're going to go to the tap, not a problem. Don't need a pump for that. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I never use tap water because you always hear it might not be health wise the best thing for you. But at this point, it's tap water.
right, right. I remember, I don't know, Caroline was maybe 2 and we had some huge power outage. And her response was to take, the jugs of water and to water all the plants so that they would not be thirsty. Now, that's not how I would have allocated the water, but I
Meanwhile,
was up
outside,
to.
there's going to be a ton of water coming down out of the sky during a hurricane.
Yep. But those plants inside, they definitely needed water. They were looking sad.
Wow.
So it's an analogy, it's a very relevant thing that a lot of people are facing. And I was on an energy call this weekend and we did a huge healing to all of Florida to,
Oh, wow.
oops, did I just lose you auditorily? To just send regrowth energy to the physical parts of Florida that got wiped out, the people and everybody. So my heart goes out to everybody who has
Hmm. That's
been affected by this Hurricane Ian.
such a great
Um,
thought because as I've learned in my journey about energy, it could be one person and you're sending vibes to them. Hey, I hope everything's going to be okay. What's a prayer? When you say, I'm sending my prayers to you, you're sending your energy, positive energy to them. Now imagine if you did that in the masses. Why don't we do that? Why don't I like this get a massive TV show on every single network and collectively now we're going to send energy to a certain spot. Why hasn't that ever been done? Maybe it has. I don't know.
I think they call it televangelist, but it's very much a thing in energy circles when we get together, because sometimes we'll have 3,000 people on a call.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And just listening to the different techniques is fascinating for me. I mean,
Sure.
that was a 5-hour class on that. So, and part of it really was, okay, let's, as a collective, try this new way of visualizing energy. And, we made our little picture in our head of what Florida looks like at its best, and then conjured up energy for Florida to get back to that.
Love that.
And it really, I do a lot of visualizing as an athlete. You have to, you're you perform better if you can visualize it, whether it's athletics or being on stage or any of the ways that you perform better if you've rehearsed it in your head perfectly.
I
Because
have to tell you, I'm glad you said that, Annie. I do that all the time. If I'm going to have a meeting with somebody that's more important, if I'm hosting something, I've done that, a bunch of times, ton of times. I visualize what it's going to be, how it's going to look, if there's an issue, how you're going to react to it. Powerful stuff, and that could be even a conversation with your kid. Let's say it's an
Mhm.
important one. Think about how you're going to say it. You don't even have to rehearse it verbally, but just play it in your head.
Yeah, in your head. And then you have a pathway for what it feels like to go well. And sometimes, especially if something is chronic in your body or your mind, you forget what it feels like to have things go well. So if you have arthritis, you forget what it feels like to have the mobility in your hands. And so visualizing, what does that feel like, is very helpful for sending healing energy to your body, but also just in terms of what does it feel like to have all of my energy centers dead even and just running perfectly, because if they're running efficiently, they don't take up as much bandwidth. Same as if your refrigerator is perfectly defrosted, it's more efficient. So you want to maintain your energy centers inside of you, your chakras, to keep them as maintained and even keeled as you can so that you're not getting really imbalanced. And
I have a question, and you just
yeah,
popped something in my head. And I always wondered about this. If you have a chakra or two that seems to require more energy, is it pulling from the other ones or just your central source of energy?
I yes, it is, because they need to compensate for it.
Hmm.
And so, and also if something's blocked. So, and sometimes all of your energy is just shut off. And then, that's like all of the power coming to the house is shut off, not just, any of the little circuit breakers. And then you really need to get yourself back up and running. And it can happen in, moments of trauma. It can happen, when something bad happens and you freeze, that freeze instinct stops your energy from flowing, and you want to come back online in increments so that you don't like zap yourself.
Mm.
So you start pretty slowly with, can you move your fingers? Can you nod your head? And sight is the sense that uses the most amount of energy,
Wow.
which is why they ask you to close your eyes when you're meditating.
Hmm.
And that's generally why you close your eyes when you're visualizing, because you want to take out all visual stimulation. And
Wow.
interestingly, auditory learners, I see this in the classroom. If they are auditory learners and they are trying to hear directions, they will not look at you. They will look down at their desk, because they focus better with their hearing if they're not having a visual stimulus happening.
Hmm.
And it presents as disrespectful.
Yeah.
And I've had to explain to other teachers, no, they're not being disrespectful. They're respecting themselves. And, young children do it instinctively, but you see it all the way up through high school. And in high school, it is considered disrespectful. And you get a lot of cueing. Look at the teacher while she's giving directions.
Wow. That's no pun intended. That's an eye opener. It really is. Huh.
Yeah.
Never even thought
And
about that.
for them, they, that's not in their best interest. And so one of the things during the pandemic when we were teaching online, to avoid eye fatigue, I did a lot of what we called chill and chat. And so they would come to camera. I had second graders at the time. they would turn their camera on and then they would build something, either with Lego or blocks or, whatever, without looking at the camera, so that they could be in community without exhausting
Hmm.
their visual energy, because they spent so much time looking, and eye contact can be pretty intense. And so you
Wow.
kind of, yeah. And
Hmm.
that has nothing to do with chakras.
Yeah, but you know what? It's fascinating and also explains a lot too why some kids don't look. They're looking the other way, whatever, now we have to cut them a lot of slack, you know. And
Yes, please.
sorry, if we've said that you need to look over here and be respectful, never knew. And I would never even think that the visual takes up so much more energy. I think it would be comparable to auditory. Never thought that. Hmm. Wow.
It's pretty close, but the visual does take up more. So if you want to give your other senses more bandwidth,
All right.
and you'll see it if somebody is tasting something for the first time, often they'll close their eyes or not look at the food. They'll, shift their gaze to something that's neutral.
You think about how many times you might have had a conversation with somebody and maybe you look to the side. It's almost as if you want to collect your thoughts,
Mhm.
but it can also be perceived as somebody who is dishonest because they're not looking at you.
Yes. And so there are ways you can um, make it so it doesn't appear that you're being sketchy or sleazy. Um,
Mm.
and my brother used to, kind of tilt his head a little bit and say, And it was his way of shifting the gaze enough so that he could really listen. So once you're aware of it, practice in the mirror your listening pose versus your visual pose. And um, after so many years of teaching kindergarten, sometimes I had to really just focus in on listening to what they were saying and not looking at them. And I would tell them, I'm going to look down so I can really hear you. And they were, 5, so they didn't really care. But it helps
Hmm.
to, just really dial into what they're saying. But it's also, um, you can have your attention somewhere totally else and not be listening to anybody.
Sure. Yeah.
And it happens when I'm driving. If the boys had on a podcast or something, and I got into a really tricky traffic situation, I would say, I need my brain right now, because I couldn't process visually and auditorily at the same time.
Just too much information. It's like overload. You just can't do it.
And they knew,
Mm.
from very early on, one, don't talk, do not even try to complain. And then as they were older, turn off whatever auditory it was. Because I said it so rarely, and they could tell that,
Yeah. Mom has a problem right now.
yeah, mommy
Where's my
needs your
daughter?
brain right now.
Yeah, yeah. And I would imagine too, if you perfected, you could look at somebody, but focus on something else other than their eyes. And then you're still looking in their direction, but you're not as connected as opposed to being perceived to be disrespectful or dishonest by looking over to the side.
Yeah, you can look at their mouth.
I do that a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes what their eyes are saying is not what their mouth is saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you're attuned to that, it can be really annoying. And so then you just look at their mouth and kind of nod.
Yeah. It's like you disconnect. You purposely disconnect.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to do that, which kind of comes back to, what are you going to prioritize if you have limited resources, or if you're on a generator, if you have something really major going on, moving, changing jobs,
Mm.
all of those big life experiences that disrupt everything, or the hurricane, or an illness, or an accident, or something. What can you leave by the side? What, all of a sudden it's, yes, honey, you're getting a box of cookies to bring for that class party instead of beautifully decorated, handmade, cupcakes. There are certainly ways you can achieve the goal with a shortcut. And
So before we dig back into chakras, you said something before and it made me think for a second, Annie. And by the way, we're talking to Annie Baker. She does Reiki and energy healing. You can find her at Red Boots Reiki. You said that there can be a situation where all of your chakras are just, they're just filled up. They need to be cleared, all of them. I can't imagine that. But if somebody is in that situation, how would they know? How would they know everything is all blocked up here, all set?
they physically freeze. And
Really?
it's a trauma response. And they're doing it to block themselves out of the awful thing that's happening to them, whether it's in the past, it doesn't matter. Your body believes that it's right now. So when I went to college, it was fight or flight. And now they're adding fight, flight, freeze, or appease to trauma response. I do a lot of studying about trauma because energy work ties in beautifully to, I don't want to say healing because we're not allowed to say that, but
I will. Healing.
Okay. To
That's what's going
supporting
on.
someone.
Then they're done
as,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
I know. What are we not allowed to say?
You didn't say it. I did it. I'll take the heat.
Okay.
So
like how somebody.
Yeah. Disclaimer.
Yeah.
Oh, like whenever you see the commercial for medication, may cause.
I know. Yeah. May cause.
Yeah.
But being able to kind of ramp up their, start the wheels spinning, because chakras spin, and they spin opposite.
Oh, I didn't know
one
that.
spins this way, one spins, and it's different for boys and girls.
Didn't know that. So question,
Yeah.
we're in the freeze. Trauma.
Okay.
Something's up.
You're in the freeze.
We're in the freeze.
And I'm going to first align my chakras.
So you're
and
saying,
make sure.
saying if it's you've had something happen.
If I'm working with you.
Okay.
First off, I'm going to make sure that my energy field is so in line and strong that your energy field can magnetize to it and mimic it. And they will. They will. Same as if you're holding a crying child, they're just sobbing. If you calm your breath down, they will regulate their breathing. Just by being near you. So the first thing is make sure that your energies are not going into a panic because you don't know what to do. So align your energies just as a good mirror for their energy. And then physically, it's teeny tiny little, and don't look at them. That feels too threatening. And so it's being near and kind of narrating. I'm here. Let your energy match my energy. Let your energy match my energy. And then you leave it for a few seconds. Can you nod your head yes? Can you shake your head no? And then you start with the extremities. Can you wiggle your little finger? Something really specific to kind of bring them back into their body. All the time, providing an appropriate circuit from your energy centers.
In that situation, let's say, it's pretty severe and somebody, are we actually almost out of time?
I know.
I'm looking at one clock. I'm like, nah, that can't be right. And then I'm looking at the other one, which is
I
the
know. I
main.
was looking at my clock too. I'm like, wow, this one went a completely different direction.
How did that happen? It feels like 10 minutes went by. That's like,
Oh.
that's weird. Weird. I feel like I'm in a time zone.
Yeah, we do this a lot with energy work.
Wow. And I'm being very honest. Like, I'm shocked. You clear out somebody's energy. Is it possible, even a few days later, for it to get all mucked up again? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And if you think of low tide, how if it's really turbulent, the muck from the bottom has that turbidity and it's not clear, but then the wind stops, it all settles. And then, the wind and the rain come again and it, gets all sparked up again. And that's why it's important to remember that your chakras are not static. They're always moving and we always want energy to move. And if you get stuck, again, I don't know if I told you this, but you can tell which is your receiving hand by, you receive from the universe when you clasp your hands, whatever thumb is on the top is your receiving hand from the universe. And then your other hand is your giving hand. And it's different for every person.
So is that just instinctually, if you go like this?
Yeah, which thumb is on top?
That would be my right hand.
Okay, so your right hand, you would put up to receive the energy in.
Wow.
And then your left hand would be wherever you're stuck chakra or wherever the energy feels stuck. And it's not always in a chakra. And then you just, put your hand maybe on your heart, and then you take your receiving hand and you cover your other hand so that you get a double dose.
That's fascinating because
I know.
I'm just going like this and I do it the same way every time. And if I try to do it, it's like, wow, what's going on here?
It doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right. And I write with my right hand, but if it's sports, throw a baseball, whatever, it's going to be with my left hand. So it's not like this is so dominant, but
it's inborn. Yeah. So that's your Reiki tip for the day.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
I know it's so practical.
Yeah.
That okay, that hand I'm going to be. It's like an antenna.
A lightning rod.
A lightning rod, exactly. And then this is my grounding.
Fascinating. Yes, we're out of time. I hate to tell you, but we are. The website is Red Boots Reiki. You have a YouTube channel with so many great videos. You call it Reiki to the
Reiki to the rescue.
Yeah, so much good stuff up there. And this energy stuff is real, people. Trust me.
Yeah. Hey, join me for Wakey Reiki. That is a great way to start your morning. It's a group class, $25. I go through all of your energy centers. I clear them and you have your coffee.
Wow. All right. I got to check into that.
6 a.m. before work.
And then how often do you do that?
Twice a week. But you just pay whichever ones you want to go to. It's not like a series. You can.
And I didn't see that on your website. Is that where we would find it?
Yes. Wakey Reiki.
Love that. Always great talking with you, Annie. It's just learn so much. You're just so real. And that's
I know this stuff is really, esoteric, but I make it real.
That's just it. For people just checking us out and thinking, that foo-foo kind of stuff. No, it is real. She's real. Go to the website, redbootsreiki.com, and look forward to getting together next time with you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.